Startups begin in communities across the country.
Why does Silicon Valley get so much credit? My name is Nick Kastner.
And I'm Kaitlyn Clays. We're interviewing the people building startup communities across America.
But in the areas no one is talking about, the middle.
This is the Ecosystem Builder Podcast by Mug.News.
Hello, everyone. I'm with my co-host, Kaitlyn Clays. Kaitlyn, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It is our 33rd episode of the Ecosystem Builder podcast, and we really have not had a time to touch base since Christmas, I think. Christmas was the last episode when it was just us, so we thought we would take the opportunity to kind of share what both Kaitlyn and I have been up to personally, and some big takeaways we've had from creating the show up until now, and then in with some other fun media products that Mug.News is creating. So Kaitlyn has been traveling basically all over the country the last 4 months, and it's been crazy. Whenever I hop on a Zoom with her, she is someplace different. So Kaitlyn, to start with, where in the world are you right now?
What a fantastic question. So I'm actually in LA currently. I'm based in Little Tokyo. So apologies if you hear some external noise of the podcast or in the YouTube show. But it has been fantastic here. I actually came out here to meet with some, film people. So I've gotten to talk to some set dressers. I've gotten to speak with a couple actors and then a couple script writers as well. So it has been fantastic to be here. I'm currently also in a pod share, which is to promote them a little bit. I do recommend them. They're a co-living space, and you can find out more about them at their handle on Instagram, Podshare. But basically, just to kind of give you a lowdown, it's a shared space where everyone, like a lot of young business professionals. So I'd have to check, but I think there is one in the Midwest, but I'm not exactly sure where. But that's a little bit of where I'm at, what I've been up to in addition to the Ecosystem Builder podcast. But yeah, Nick, that's a little bit about me. What's some updates that you've been up to?
Before we leave this pod share, Kaitlyn, so is it kind of like is it kind of like a hostel?
Exactly. Yes. It's the whole concept is very similar to a hostel. The difference is that it's very much more co-living. So they encourage people to use it as like a living space. So there's a communal kitchen, a communal living room. There's a co-working space upstairs as well. So it's perfect for digital nomads like myself, and then just a lot of young business professionals as well.
Yeah, yes. I've spent quite a bit of time in hostels just throughout the world, and it's cool to see them, I guess, catered towards the digital nomad young person. And even beforehand we were chatting, and it seems like you have friends even in the room you're in now. So shout out to Kaitlyn's friend that she's sharing the space with.
Yeah. I've got a live studio audience member right now.
Yeah. We just put woo up on the screen, and then the live studio audience,
Yeah. I'm actually holding up a sign that says "Please clap."
Yeah. There it is, right on cue.
Thank you so much, Mary Jane. I appreciate it. Shout out.
Yeah, right on cue. Yeah, Kaitlyn, but I've been good. I am continuing, so I am now employed by Hurrdat Media, and then create the show on the side. And then I have 2 other podcasts that I create weekly. One, my girlfriend is a musician, and we have a podcast together. Her name is Emmy Jo, and it's called The Emmy Jo Show featuring Nick. And we just talk a lot about being like young creatives and starting our careers in that front. And then the Commonwealth is my first podcast. We are approaching our 100th episode next Monday. So very excited about that. 100 episodes. It's one of those, I'm not always great about like getting excited about like big milestones, but 100 episodes seems like a big milestone. So I'm trying my hardest to get excited about it. And we interview creators of disruptive change throughout the Midwest. Primarily, I'm based out of Omaha and Lincoln, so primarily around that region. So still podcasting, and then the day job, a digital media strategist for our different shows within our networks, a lot of social media, YouTube optimization, PR, and then on the side, I am helping Emmy start her music career. I'm kind of playing a role as manager. So we shot a music video last Friday that should be out in the next couple weeks, and it is again just another fun creative environment to be in. And to kind of segue to our next topic, it's interesting the things I've learned from the guests on this show and how that applies to the different spheres that we all operate in. That, like, when I'm talking about engaging a community online, or like creating a Facebook page, or helping build / establish a creative community in Nebraska, it's interesting the dynamics that are similar in those contexts as traditional ecosystem building.
I could not agree more. And before we get into that, I also just, again, a huge round of applause. And I'm so happy for you about your 100th episode. That, I know you're saying, like, milestones, but that is so impressive. And I'm so happy for you and your team that have worked so hard on that. So again, congratulations. That's so great. I'm so happy for you.
Yes, thank you so much, Kaitlyn. I appreciate the kind words. And I'm also very interested, if our audience isn't already watching, Kaitlyn is about to break through this film industry, that she's making a bunch of very cool connections, and it'll be amazing to see where Kaitlyn ends up as she's just kind of laying the groundwork now. So definitely keep your tabs open on both Kaitlyn and myself, because I'm very confident that Kaitlyn and I's careers will cross paths multiple times outside of the Ecosystem Builder podcast.
I'm really excited. We talked off screen a little bit about what we're going to do today, but I will hand it over to you to lay out the groundwork of what this episode's kind of going to look like next.
Yes, yeah. That Kaitlyn and I both took some time of reflecting on what we wanted to share with everyone for this episode, and what we decided was to share our major takeaways, because at the end of every podcast, we both share. The person who did the interview, we share what our biggest takeaway was from that specific conversation. But we kind of wanted to, I guess, broaden the conversation out and discuss what our biggest takeaways were from hosting this show up until now. So I have 3 major takeaways. I don't know how many Kaitlyn jotted down. But Kaitlyn, do you maybe want to alternate, and you can go first, and then you can do a takeaway, I'll do a takeaway, then vice versa.
Yeah, right on. So should we just get into it?
Sure, yeah, let's jump in.
All right. So I guess some of my biggest takeaways, we've gotten to meet so many different people. And as you know, and as the guests have probably figured out by this point, is I'm a huge people person. And so, with my communication degree, the theater person in me, it's just connecting with people is so important. And I've learned that through our guests, is that keeping those connections up is what makes a strong ecosystem builder. It's about one of those things of who you know. And one of the coolest things that I've heard multiple times as a trend from different ecosystem builders is they have been very much if I don't know something, I'm going to refer you to someone who does. And so maintaining relationship building has been a large piece of things that I've taken away. I put it into personal life in addition to career, and it's just a great quality to just take away from that's my first takeaway that I kind of wanted to bring up.
Yeah, Kaitlyn, so what's funny is my first takeaway on my list, and mind you, we did not share notes at all before this, was importance of connections. And yeah, and sort of there's different roles, and Tom Chapman, who is I guess the owner of Mug.News, he puts this more eloquently because he teaches this, but there's different, roles people play in establishing connections. And one is the connector of you need to know this person. And then there's also being in that network. But there's a bunch of both, there's a bunch of value in Kaitlyn is looking for a production assistant role, and I'm going to connect her with different actors, in Kaitlyn's context that she lives in. But that applies to so many different, so many different fields and industries and communities, regardless of them being startups or not. Like I mentioned, Emmy being a musician, her producer of her first song. So there's this musician who just signed to a major label from Lincoln. Her name is Angie Von Campen, and literally has 200,000 followers on Spotify. And one of her producers is working with Emmy now on a single, who's My Girlfriend. So just that connection, I was able to land that interview because I had a mutual connection, and all of that helps build a creative community, or any type of community like that. I'm just using the music scene as an example, but that is also literally when I was writing down, that was the first thing that came to mind. I think if you know people, if you're well connected and you have a goal of helping advance and establish a community, connecting those two, connecting people within the community is an easy thing to take responsibility of. Yeah, okay, so my number 2 was a lot of the people we talked to really, I guess, have a self-awareness is maybe the word of their own community. Of they know the strengths that their community possesses, and then look to double down on those strengths and make them stronger, and really just I guess establish those as a pillar of a community. And there's so many examples, but I think like the first step of all the ecosystem, like of all the ecosystems we featured, I think it's interesting that most of them really can tell what value their home ecosystem has. And I think that's just a good reminder of that community organizing and like ecosystem building, of like assessing and valuing what your community is good at.
You know, it's my turn to laugh because literally my next thing I have written down is community. But I have a but I do have a different bullet point. So it's still good. We got this, but we're very much on the same wavelength. So for me with community, I had, again, kind of like riffing off you, that interpersonal communication and those relationship building. So you had mentioned that where people have strengths, I was kind of also thinking about recognizing what things need attention. That was kind of one of the things like with, diversity, equity, and inclusion, for example. So there have been some ecosystem builders from rural areas in addition to other ones where they're like, hey, we recognize that this is a weakness, but it's something that's not going to deter us from trying harder or from not doing anything. It's that we're going to try harder to address some of those inequalities. So that was something that I picked up on, and that was very inspiring. So these community leaders who are saying, this needs change. So how are we going to change it? How are we going to come together to build this? And something else about community was, again, be kind to everyone. It goes without saying. It's like humans are supposed to be nice to each other. Yeah, we get that. But it goes beyond that, because you never know, if you'll be able to help them down the road, or for example, they'll be able to help you. It just makes a ton of sense to keep those community relationships up. So that's kind of what I had to say on that, on that second part. So it's very funny. We have like community connection.
Yeah, yes. And the one thing that I think about this frequently, your comment on the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and at I guess the last June it would have been, that was a huge focus. And when we started the show, we wanted it to be a huge focus, and we're still making it a huge focus. And that also is important to not change, especially in a system, will only happen over a long period of time, and it's not an overnight thing, and not just looking at something shiny and be like, oh, we should do something about this, but add that into your strategy and your vision setting and long-term planning. It will be the only way to actually implement changes in any regard, but especially around that sense of belonging. And the thing I think back to frequently was Cecilia Wassinger was one of our first. I think she was episode number 8, and she specializes in this, how to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the thing she kind of broke down for me was diversity, equity, and inclusion are, I guess, a funnel, if you will, of first you need diversity, and they are metrics for one another, but the real thing everyone should be after, and the real goal, is a sense of belonging. Can anyone join your community and feel like they belong in that community? And I think a lot of times people, I guess, get distracted with diversity numbers and initiatives and all of that, but that sense of belonging is really what everyone's after and what everyone should be focused on. And the diversity numbers lead into that belonging, but it's not if you hit, diversity metrics, that's not the end goal. It's anyone can join this community and feel like they belong. Mm-hmm. So then I will share my last point, Kaitlyn, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Yeah. So mine is, I think the best ecosystems I've ever encountered, or the best ecosystem builders I've ever encountered, are able to really articulate a vision and lay out an idea for where they want their community to grow, while staying nimble to the day-to-day implementation of that. That it's important to lay out a plan and communicate that plan. And that is actually probably the most difficult part, those two steps, but still not allowing the plan to get in the way of actually implementing that on a day-to-day basis. So that is one of my biggest takeaways from the show this far.
Yeah, and then kind of my last one was just the flexibility. So the vision and mission statements of things. And so a lot of times, like each ecosystem builder, the question that we ask that comes to mind is, what's the first step you should take when stepping in a certain direction? And a lot of times the first step people, like our ecosystem builders, say that you should take is to observe. What is the community you're going into? What are some observations you make? Where are some trouble issues, or where's a problem that you can solve and that only you can solve it? So what I like about that and what that says to me is that, come prepared with an idea of what you're going to do, but have an open mind to perhaps your approach may change, and be okay with it. Our ecosystem builders definitely talk about you will have success, you will have fails, but rather than thinking about things as a failure, you think about them as a learning step and a stepping stone. And as a creative, and I'm sure like you've noticed this, Emmy has noticed this, you need to be okay. And if you change the way you think about failure, for example, think of it to have an educational standpoint on it makes you feel much better as a creative if you make multiple educational moments rather than failures. It just changes the way your mindset is. And as we're all this is true, but I feel like society's becoming more aware of mental health, for example. So the importance of it, and so having a mental wellness by restructuring your thoughts on failure is going to help you succeed more. That was kind of like my final takeaway. It's kind of those soft skills, communication skills, but it goes right into business communication and everything ecosystem building.
Absolutely, Kaitlyn, that was a very, very good one. I kind of got goosebumps hearing you talk about it. So yeah, wonderful, wonderful takeaway. So before we read out the show, there are two new fun media products by Mug.News, and the first one is spearheaded by Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn is the host and has been doing a bunch of work. It is called Coffee Grinds. Kaitlyn, what is Coffee Grinds all about?
I'm so glad you asked. So, if you like coffee puns, student entrepreneurs, and innovative thoughts on the new entrepreneurial world, Coffee Grinds is the show for you. So, myself and Justin Krug, who is another team member on Mug.News, we interviewed 12 students on entrepreneurship in the Midwest. So they are people who, we have people, Nick, you and I, who are on the show that have had 15 plus years of experience in the entrepreneurship world. And it's so great to hear their advice. But one of the things Justin and I talked about is that, let's hear the voices of some people who are just getting in the field. Let's hear their stories that they have to tell. And so kind of just taking a pivot, we're talking with students who are having internships. They've either started their own business or they are just getting into it. And so we ask their thoughts on their educational system and their communities. And I have got to say, it's a little bit of a twist from our show. So it's about 15 minutes, and then we have a lot of comedy puns, and it's just really cool to get to talk with the students. So a little bit of information about it. It airs Tuesdays at 9 a.m. every other week. And that is the time that the quote unquote digital coffee shop is open.
Yeah, and you can find the link to the first few episodes in our bio. It's also on our YouTube page if you're watching on YouTube. And I know, so Kaitlyn, the next one I've heard a lot about, and we're in a Slack channel, and people are always pinging back and forth about this donut tournament. However, I don't know much about it, so I can't even begin to explain it. So I'm gonna lean on you on the on this donut tournament. That what's going on there?
Absolutely. So, as Mug.News, we talk about coffee and all of the things, but what pairs better with coffee? Donuts. Donuts pair great with coffee. And so what we're doing right now, it's called the Golden Donut Competition. And so essentially the whole point is we want to highlight some local donut shops. So basically what we are asking community members is to go ahead and nominate your favorite donut shop. And once we have this nomination going down, we're going to treat it just like the Olympics. The Olympics are coming up, so we're going to have some competitions. It's going to be very exciting. So we're going to get this chance to interact with your community. If you want to nominate your favorite donut shop, give them some good highlights, highlight the Midwest. And then it's also going to be really fun if you like to vote and have that thrill of sports, of like whose team is gonna win. That's kind of like the vibe we're going for with the Golden Donut Challenge.
Yes, and we're having a lot of fun with it. So it's definitely a fun, lighthearted, get you through the summer type of vibe. So definitely check that out on Mug.News. And we'll again put that in the link in our bio. Kaitlyn, before I read us out, what is your favorite sport to watch in the Olympics? Or growing up, were you a big Olympic person?
No. But I'm thinking on my feet though. I really like gymnastics. I tried to be in gymnastics once and it didn't work. but I have an appreciation for the art of it. I love it. I love to watch. But I suppose, I guess dive, like that's like an Olympic thing, diving. So I used to be on dive team. So I think gymnastics and dive team, those are what I love. I love to watch those.
I'm continuing to learn something new about you, Kaitlyn. I would have never guessed you were on the diving team. I love swimming, but really overall, I just love the Olympics. There's something about like the whole world stage and everyone puts down their like political BS for a second and forgets that they're Democrat, Republican and stops screaming and just cheers for America. It is the best. I don't feel patriotic too much, but when there's an American Olympic gold medalist, I am yelling the Star Spangled Banner. I love the Olympics. Kaitlyn, did you have anything else you want to touch on before I read us out?
Yeah, just again, we will have a link in the description where you can nominate whatever donut shop you want to, vote for and nominate. And so, yeah, just again, that Google Doc is going to be in the description as well. So excited for you all to enjoy it with us and have fun with the upcoming Olympics and donut competition. But that is all that I have, Nick.
Perfect. Yeah, we will be back to regular interviews next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to today's kind of bonus special edition episode of the Ecosystem Builder podcast, which is a product of Mug.News and hosted by myself, Nick Kastner, and Kaitlyn Clays. If you have any questions about today's episode, connect with us on Twitter at Nick Kastner, at Clays Creates, or at Mug.News Official. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share with your friends. We release episodes every single Wednesday morning, so make sure to follow so you don't miss a beat.